Hey, what's up YouTube? Dom the Smartphone Guy coming back at you with another video, and tonight I am very excited to share with you my first impressions of this absolutely gorgeous device. This is the Xiaomi Mi Mix 2, and this is a follow-up to last year's Mi Mix, which was kind of the first phone, I would argue, to bring about the bezel-less display. At least it was the first one to make it a little bit more marketable to the public, and now it's become basically the trend of 2017 flagship devices to have that bezel-less display. So let's go ahead and talk about my first impressions of this phone. I've had it now in hand for just over 24 hours, and so far you can color me impressed because I do really like this phone up to this point. So let's go ahead and go back, and I'm just going to talk about the price real quick. So you're looking at $560 for the 64 gig version that you can see here. If you step it up to the highest end model, we got 256 gig version for $640, and then the version I have, the 128 gig version with 6 gigs of RAM, for $600. Now I do have coupon codes available, linked down in the description. These are for gearbest.com. So whatever the best price I can find on these, I'll go ahead and link that down with some coupons if they are available at the time. So again, right now I think this one actually for the 64 gig version, I think I can get it down to 540 is what I last saw for gearbest.com, so definitely check that out. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the specs of this device, and then we'll get into the build quality and things like that. So definitely a stunning device. So let's go ahead and go into the description and talk about some of these specs. So first thing you'll notice is that we have a 6-inch display, and it's basically bezel-less. You can see there is just kind of a small bezel here, off to the side, just a very small bezel, and up at the top also a very, very tiny bezel, but nearly bezel-less. So we have the Snapdragon 835 processor clocked at 2.45 gigahertz, so very fast, 6 gigs of RAM. There is actually a version of this phone with 8 gigs of RAM, that's the special edition, and that also has a slightly different build, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later. So we have a 12 megapixel camera in the back, 5 megapixel camera up front, which is actually down here on the bottom, so a little bit of a different design there. We have a full HD plus display that's 2160 by 1080 pixels. And so again, we already talked about the Snapdragon processor. It's running Xiaomi's MIUI 8. It actually says 8, but it's actually 8.5 is what we have in here. So in terms of sensors, we have all of the important sensors. We even have NFC on this phone. We have a dual SIM, so dual nano SIMs right over here. And we have, of course, all the GPS satellites here, or all the GPS antennas. We have Bluetooth 5.0, and probably more importantly, down here, we have a ton of antenna bands, and this is basically globally unlocked. Pretty much any antenna band that you would need to get LTE throughout the world is available. So I have it currently with T-Mobile, and yes, 4G Plus means LTE, so I do have LTE on this device with T-Mobile, so it will also work with AT&T, Metro PCS, Cricket, all of the above essentially. So that's a quick rundown of the specs. Now let's go ahead and take a look around this phone. So we have Type-C here, we have a speaker here, that's our loudspeaker, we have a microphone down here, some antenna bands, we have an aluminum bezel here, or aluminum casing, but the back again is ceramic with 24 carats surrounding that camera, that 12 megapixel camera. Super fast fingerprint sensor with dual flash, so we'll go ahead and test out that fingerprint sensor real quick, and you can see it's about as fast as it gets. So just as fast as the Mi 6, the Xiaomi Mi 6, which was also very fast. So beautiful design in my opinion. Now the special edition version of this phone actually comes with a ceramic unibody, so instead of aluminum casing here, you would actually get a ceramic unibody, which is pretty awesome. So that is a huge plus with this phone. Now notice there is something missing here. There is no headphone jack. So if that's a deal breaker for you, then you don't want to get this phone. So let's go ahead and just get that elephant out of the room right away. So on this side we have our power button and volume rocker, and that's about it. So in terms of what you get in the box, we're going to go ahead and set that off to the side. One thing I didn't mention is that it does have a 3400 milliamp hour battery built into it, and yes, it does have fast charging, Qualcomm 3.0 fast charging. And in the box, you get, of course, the phone. We get our Type-C cable here. We get our fast charger. So this is a 3 amp fast charger here. So there it is, 3 amps. So you can see that there. In the box, you do also get your adapter for plugging in the 3.5 to Type-C adapter there. You do also get this case here, which I really actually like. It's not going to support the bottom of the phone, or it's not going to protect the bottom of the phone. But other than that, it's kind of a thin, minimalist case, but it is a nice one in my opinion, and I really like it. So it has kind of a matte feel to it. Gives the phone a lot more grip than you would have otherwise. So let's go ahead and set that off to the side. And I want to bring over a little piece of paper here that I've used for some other reviews. And you can see here just some of the areas I want to talk about. So the build quality wise, we've already marked it off. That is, for me, 10 out of 10. I really like the build quality of this device. Obviously missing that headphone jack, but so far, build quality wise, I absolutely love it. So in terms of performance, so that's another important area. So far, this phone has absolutely flown. Again, it has that Snapdragon 835 processor with 6 gigs of RAM, and absolutely no hiccups at all with this device up to this point. So this is only 24 hours in, but let's go into Geekbench, and you can see that it's scoring well up there, right up in the likes of phones like the OnePlus 5. So very good multi-core and single-core score there, as you would expect. In terms of cameras, now that's an area I can't really speak to quite yet. Need to do a lot more testing with it, but it will shoot in 4K on the rear and 1080p on the front in terms of video. And again, we have 12 megapixel camera, so pretty snappy. You can see how fast it will take pictures. There's my LG V30 hat from T-Mobile. Thank you, T-Mobile. But 12 megapixel camera, just a single 12 megapixel camera, so they didn't jump on that dual camera train there. So 12 megapixels, nice fall colors there. And front-facing camera is only 5 megapixels, so that's kind of an interesting situation. It's actually at the bottom, so when you actually go to take a selfie, so let's go in here and switch it over to the front-facing camera, and it will actually tell you to switch it around. So 5 megapixel camera up front. I would say right now that's probably a weakness. I've kind of already tested that a little bit just to see what it's like. That 5 megapixel camera up front. If you're a selfie shooter, I'm not sure that this would be the right device for you. Battery life. Now that is an area that this phone has really shined up to this point. So let's go ahead and jump into, so let's go ahead and look at that. So 20% is what I'm at right now. Again, this is only day one, so it's really hard to say for sure what the battery is going to be like, but let's go ahead and here to hardware. So screen on time, you can see 37%. So I'm at 6 hours and 23 minutes. So do the math, and we're looking at over 8 hours of screen on time on day one of this phone. And I've used it quite heavily, obviously with it being on that long. I took it off the charger at, I want to say like 8 o'clock this morning, and it's now, well, it's actually 12:51 the next day. 6 hours, 6.5 hours of screen on time was still 20% battery life. So far battery life on this phone is probably better than any other flagship device I've used up to this point this year. Now this is an area that I would say is a major negative, and that's the software. So I'm actually already rocking Nova Launcher on this thing, but I'm going to go ahead and jump into what they have as the stock launcher. It's called System Launcher here. And so this is the System Launcher for Xiaomi, and I've got to say, I'm not a huge fan. Now, over here, it's got the Google Store. Now, the Google Play Store does not come preloaded onto this device. That is something you're going to have to sideload like I did with the Google installer. It's pretty easy to do, doesn't take much time at all. You can definitely check out some YouTube videos about that, or if you'd like to see me make a video for that. It was pretty simple. So you will have to get that in order to get the Google Play Store. Very simple, like I said, to do. But software-wise, I'm just not a huge fan of what Xiaomi has here. Again, it still looks just very cartoonish in my opinion. And then if we go into the settings, now there are some really nice settings available here. So we have second space. which actually kind of turns your phone into two separate phones in a way. You can have like a space for when you're at home versus a space for when you're maybe at work. So basically completely set up different, and even different apps if you want for those two setups. Or maybe you have like another person that you might hand the phone off to. That's kind of weird, but maybe you do, and that second space is nice for that. Lots and lots of customization available on here. So we got tons of themes available, and this is just a few of them. And then you can go up here to their theme store and get lots of different theme options. So if you want a more stock looking device, you can find a stock looking theme in there. Actually, I think on the last Xiaomi phone with the Mi 6, I downloaded one called Android Nougat. And so it ended up making it look very similar to Android Nougat, which was nice. And so, or maybe there's probably one for Android O at this point. Haven't really looked because I just went ahead and jumped right on to Nova Launcher with this. But lots and lots of options for modding this phone. Under the additional settings, we have the quick ball. So that just gives you kind of this like, we'll turn that on real quick. So just a little quick toggle there. So that's all that one does. Nice to have, I suppose. Not something I will ever use, but screenshot, that's just a 3-finger swipe down to get a screenshot, just like you saw there. That's one I do use, obviously. We have a notification light. There is actually a little notification light down here, so that just turns that on. We have some headphone effects here. Now, again, you're going to have to use a Type-C adapter or Type-C headphones, or of course Bluetooth obviously will work as well. So we also have buttons, so that's actually going to change your buttons down here. Actually, that's down here. And then you can also change what it does when you long press the buttons. So that is great. You can kind of adjust those as well. We do have a one-handed mode available as well, and then some accessibility options. So lots and lots of modifications that you can do. So this is one that obviously has that available. We do also have dual apps similar to what you'd get on like the Note 8. So if you want maybe like Facebook and YouTube to come together, you can do that. So that's a nice option as well. But software-wise, I'm just not a huge fan of what Xiaomi does, and so again, I went ahead and jumped right onto the Nova Launcher bandwagon with this device almost right away, just because I could not stand Xiaomi's Mi UI. That's just a personal preference. Obviously, maybe that's different for you, but for me, I had to jump onto Nova Launcher with this device. So next, let's talk about the speaker. So speaker-wise, this actually has dual speakers. So we have a little speaker up here, which also is the earpiece, and then we have another speaker down here. So let's go ahead and take a listen to those. Oops, not into Chrome. We want to go in here, and I have a YouTube video already ready to go. So here we go. We'll crank that right up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cover up the bottom speaker first. You can hear the earpiece right up here. Okay, and then I'll cover the earpiece. So it's pretty clear that the main volume is coming out of the bottom speaker. Okay, so actually it's nice. It has dual speakers. I wouldn't say they're the best speakers I've ever heard, and but it definitely competes with other phones like the HTC U11, which I'm actually filming this on, the iPhone 8 Plus, another phone that has dual speakers, very similar setup to what we have here, and I would say this is a very comparable speaker setup, and in terms of sound quality, pretty much the same. Now, waterproofing, that's an area where you're not going to get anything with this device. In fact, when you pull your SIM out, if there's any kind of waterproofing, typically you'd have an O-ring. This phone does not have that. So waterproofing, I'm thinking there's probably nothing here, and there's nothing that they advertise, so I'd assume that that's probably non-existent. In terms of audio, I showed you some of the settings that it has available with the audio, but overall, Audio in terms of the speakers is pretty decent, not great, but I haven't really tried it with any headphones yet, so there's no special DACs that I'm aware of with this device. So I would assume audio is probably similar to what you'd get with other devices that don't have special DACs. And of course, this phone is unlocked. Basically, it's worldwide unlocked. It will work throughout the world. Pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to be able to get LTE with this device, which is a huge plus. So overall, is this phone worth it? I really like it so far. Obviously, the biggest negatives, there's no headphone jack. The software, as long as you can, throw on Nova Launcher and you're okay with that, or throw in one of the themes that's a little bit more stock Android-like, then actually the software is not too bad, but battery life is fantastic, so that's definitely a huge thumbs up. Performance is fantastic. The build quality is 10 out of 10. I would say these three areas right here are definitely a 10 out of 10 for me. The speakers are very good. The biggest negatives would be the software and that front-facing camera up to this point. Now, I haven't really tested out the rear camera. So far, it seems like it's pretty good, and there is, I should have mentioned this earlier, optical image stabilization built into that 12 megapixel camera, so that should give you some pretty decently stabilized footage, and I'll do that more as I do my final review. But so far, the rear camera seems pretty decent, but that front-facing camera is only so-so. So those are the areas that you're probably going to be making some, I would say, you're probably going to have to take your hits with the camera and the software, but these areas here are definitely huge thumbs up, and the fact that it's unlocked for the entire world is also a huge thumbs up as well. So that's just my first impressions. I'm going to be using this a lot more over the next couple weeks, and I will give you my final review hopefully soon. And with that being said, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.